Whenever we enter any Disney park, we expect to feel like in a fairy tale. We never expect to feel just like Alice when she enters Wonderland. But there are times that Disney has created some pretty weird attractions and shows, and today, we want to take a look at 5 of Disney's weirdest attractions. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button, so you can become part of our FPF notification squad. Superstar Limo.
So, Mickey, it's just you and me, and I love that ride, and I want to go on it with you.
Aw. Let's go. Okay, boss.
Okay, boss. And you know, Mickey, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful theme park.
You betcha.
Disney's California Adventure opened on February 8th, 2001, and with it came the infamous Superstar Limo. This ride was originally intended to be a thrilling dark ride, a step up from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. In the concept, Michael Eisner welcomed his newest film star, hey, that's you, to Hollywood, and appeared in the ride to tease you for being late to your own film premiere. If you made it on time, you'd be signed onto the newest Walt Disney Studios film to become the company's next big thing. He gives a warning though, watch out for the paparazzi. What would follow is a high-speed chase through Hollywood, dodging flashing cameras and zooming past Hollywood landmarks. It would be no rock and roller coaster, but quick enough to where the ride system would require banked turns to protect the track from stress. Superstar Limo was planned for California Adventure from the very beginning, showing up in early concept art. Michael Eisner was very fond of the project, but the Disney company and the world itself were about to take some turns that would doom the ride as it was planned. In August 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in a car accident while she reportedly fled paparazzi. This was far too similar to the plot for Superstar Limo, and it needed to be reworked fast if it was going to open with the park. It was decided that the ride would no longer be a fast chase, but a more scenic tour of Hollywood, sans paparazzi. A slower attraction meant that the scenes would need to be more fleshed out to give riders something to look at, but even that was put in jeopardy with the initial failure of Disneyland Paris. Disneyland Paris was a major investment for the Walt Disney Company, and with an abysmal opening, it was unsure when they'd make a return on that investment. Michael Eisner famously slashed budgets across all parks, and Disney's California Adventure was perhaps hit the hardest. Where guests would originally enter through a recreation of one of LAX's most famous buildings, you'd now enter a plain show building decorated with painted flats. The cartoonish props in the queue felt like they belonged in Toontown, not modern, glamorous Hollywood. A puppet of Joan Rivers welcomed you into baggage claim at LAX.
Tell me that the new superstar is arriving at the LAX terminal, which is just an emerald throw from where I am standing right now.
And you were greeted by your puppet agent, Swifty LaRue, as you entered your limousine.
Swifty here, babe. Welcome to Hollywood. Looking sensational as always. Mwah. Listen, I'll have your contract for you at the premiere, okay? Just get to the Chinese theater pronto, you hear me? Everybody's waiting, capiche? Now don't be late, babe.
What followed was, by anyone's account, a glorified fair ride. The celebrities depicted by animated figures were barely popular by the time the ride opened. The gags were either corny or too obscure for tourists to understand, and overall, it was very lackluster. A far cry from what Michael Eisner had promised back in the 90s, and guests took notice. Disney's California Adventure performed poorly out of the gate, with a lot of that attributed to the budget slashing done before and during construction. The park just plain didn't look good. It was the embodiment of what Michael Eisner wanted out of the parks at the time: cheap, trendy, and geared towards teens and young adults. It fell flat, and Superstar Limo was hit the hardest with guest backlash. On January 11th, 2002, less than a year after opening, Superstar Limo closed permanently. Its replacement, Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue, would open on January 23rd, 2006. The 4-year reskin used a lot of elements from Superstar Limo: the track, the ride vehicles, and most notably, the animated figures. Most of the celebrities were repurposed into CDA agents, and it's easy to spot who's who by looking at the position of their arms and legs. Less talked about is the Regis Philbin figure, who was stripped down and used for Randall Boggs. The overhaul reportedly cost Disney about $30 million, but they had a lot more to spend in the future, as the Michael Eisner era of the parks would slowly be phased out. The making of me.
Me? I started here. Not now. 60 years ago, actually. Now, I know this sounds truly remarkable, but That's my dad. Or will be.
When Epcot Center was being dreamt up, the idea of a pavilion centered around health and fitness was always in the works. However, it was difficult to find a sponsor to back the idea. Enter MetLife, the first and only insurance company to sponsor anything at a Disney park. Construction soon began on the Wonders of Life Pavilion, situated between Universe of Energy and Horizons. Wonders of Life opened on October 19, 1989, with two main attractions, Body Wars and Cranium Command. Less than 2 weeks later, the Birth Theater inside the pavilion debuted with a film that proved itself very controversial. Spearheaded by Disney chairman Michael Eisner and MetLife president John C. Creedon, The Making of Me was an educational film showing two adults meeting, dating, getting married, honeymooning, and conceiving a child. This would likely strike up controversy even today, but it was particularly un-Disney-like in 1989. Narrated by Epcot favorite Martin Short, the film included a minute-and-a-half animated segment depicting the fertilization of an egg, followed by popular photos of fetal development. The Making of Me certainly fit the theme of Wonders of Life, but did it belong at a Disney park? It's anybody's guess. To try and appease park guests, a sign was put outside the theater warning parents of the content shown. Despite needing a warning, The Making of Me was praised for presenting this type of subject material in a family-friendly way. It might not have been the most exciting thing to do in Future World, but it was, at the very least, 16 minutes of sitting down in an air-conditioning theater. MetLife pulled its sponsorship of Wonders of Life in 2001, and as is Epcot tradition, the pavilion rapidly declined after the loss. In 2004, Disney made the decision to only open the pavilion during busy seasons to increase the capacity of the park. On January 1st, 2007, after a busy holiday season, the Wonders of Life Pavilion officially closed its doors. It would be repurposed as a festival center later that year, and The Making of Me would never see another showing. The marquee and entrance were blocked by an awkward curtain in 2007. From 2008 onward, the theater was reused to show Seasons of the Vine during Epcot's Food and Wine Festival. The Wonders of Life is currently closed and being repurposed into the Play Pavilion, so any chance of the Birth Theater being returned to its strange and original glory is lost. Mickey Mania Parade. On June 1st, 1994, the Magic Kingdom debuted a parade focused on Mickey Mouse, and it was certainly a byproduct of the 90s. The theme of the parade was a celebration of how Mickey could be seen all over the world, from movies to watches to toys and balloons. Mickey Mania featured a variety of ways for characters and cast members to make their way along the parade route. Costume characters rode on tricycles, and cast members used skateboards, rollerblades, stilts, and bikes. The first float of the parade featured a skateboard ramp that performers would perform tricks off of. Mickey Mania also had a lot of inflatable costumes and float elements throughout. Performers wore balloon-like pieces that resembled different pieces of Mickey outfits, including his gloves and shoes. Cast members in bright costumes hopped down the parade route on exercise balls. Winnie the Pooh waved from a float covered in Mickey Mouse plushies. 4 performers wore costumes that resembled parts of Mickey wristwatches. The parade was peak 90s, with a combination of bright costumes, geometric shapes, and a focus on extreme sports. It also felt very, very Eisner influenced. In an era of the Disney parks where teens were the target demographic, Mickey Mania tried hard to draw in those guests. The soundtrack for the parade was done in hip-hop style, with classic lyrics such as "My main man, Mickey Mouse, is bustin' fresh out of sight." Maybe even more surprising, given the odd theme and quality of this parade, is that it made its way to Tokyo Disneyland for a limited engagement. But their Mickey Mania parade had some updated floats and costumes. It's important to note that this parade wasn't in response to any milestone for Mickey Mouse, such as a birthday or anniversary. It simply just was. All of this in combination with the heavy focus on Mickey merchandise made the parade feel like an actual cash grab. Mickey Mania didn't see a lot of changes over the years, and the most prominent was a partial removal of Roger Rabbit after Disney ran into copyright issues with Amblin Entertainment. Roger originally had some dialogue in the soundtrack, but he was replaced with Max. Though his dialogue was cut, he did occasionally still appear in the parade. Overall, Mickey Mania Parade was a fever dream based on mainly Mickey Mouse merchandise. The quality was poor, it felt uninspired, and it just wasn't made to last. The parade ran at the Magic Kingdom from June 1994 to September 1996, when it was replaced by Remember the Magic. It only ran at Tokyo Disneyland in 1995. Diamond Double Cross. Speaking of Eisner's trying to expand the park's target demographic, let's talk about the Disney decade. In January 1990, Michael Eisner revealed his massive plan to rebrand and expand Disney's theme parks. His goal was to host over 100 million guests every year in what was deemed the Disney decade. Walt Disney World in particular was set to see a lot of changes, including the construction and opening of Disney's Animal Kingdom. A lot of focus had also been placed on Disney MGM Studios, which had opened a year prior. Early MGM Studios relied heavily on its use as a functioning film studio in its early years, and Eisner planned to connect this park to up-and-coming and current film. One of the most commonly talked about plans was his Roger Rabbit expansion that included 3 attractions based on the 1998 film. In 1990, the film Dick Tracy was set to release, and Eisner already had a plan to incorporate it into Disney MGM. A stage show, Dick Tracy starring in Diamond Double Cross, was set to debut a month before the film's release. If the film's release went well, Eisner was ready to build an e-ticket attraction based on the film. The show opened at the Theater of the Stars on May 21st, 1990. Diamond Double Cross was roughly based on the plot of the movie, but it took a lot of artistic license with the rest. The most notable change was that the show was a musical. What most guests probably remember from the show is the use of masks for the antagonists. In the film, the actors for Big Boy, Flat Top, and Mumbles wore face prosthetics to give them a more villainous and cartoony look.
As you know, if anything happens to Tracy, I'm the prime suspect. Leave Dick Tracy to me.
For Diamond Double Cross, the production might have cut costs by using full head masks instead. The result was a little unsettling, but it certainly was memorable. This, combined with the bright primary color scheme pulled straight from the film, made for a show that could only come from the early days of Disney MGM. A month after it debuted in Florida, an identical show opened at Videopolis in Disneyland. Despite the build-up to the film in both parks and Eisner's confidence that it would be a hit, Dick Tracy was met in theaters with lukewarm reviews.
Maybe you'll have a change of heart.
In a time where most things Disney touched turned to gold, this was a huge blow. The show wrapped at the end of 1990 at Disneyland, and it only lasted until January of 1991 at Disney MGM Studios. All plans for the e-ticket attraction, Dick Tracy Crime Stoppers, were permanently shelved. Disney MGM Studios had a lot of short-lived and interesting tie-ins over the years, but this may have been the shortest. Body Wars.
Body Wars. Get miniaturized for the ride of your life through the human body. Body Wars. One of the incredible wonders of life. New at Epcot Center.
Let's take a journey back over to Epcot's Wonders of Life Pavilion, shall we? Because the pavilion blessed us with more than one weird attraction. Younger guests probably don't realize that the park housed a thrill ride before Mission Space opened in 2003. When the Wonders of Life Pavilion opened in 1989, it housed a motion simulator attraction called Body Wars. Using the same Atlas ride system as Star Tours, this ride shrunk guests down to show how white blood cells react to a splinter. Going through the queue, the guests learned they're team members of a company called Miniaturized Exploration Technologies, also known as MET. Dr. Cynthia Layer, one of MET's employees, was set to shrink down and absorb the site of a splinter in a volunteer's finger. For unknown reasons, Dr. Layer could get to the site, but she couldn't get herself back, so it was up to you to retrieve her. After a few rounds of dermatopic purification, guests are grouped to board their LGS 250 type vehicle. Once boarded, the ship was moved from the loading bay to the miniaturization room. After being shrunk down by a particle reducer, the ship made its way under the subject's skin, where you could see white blood cells attacking the splinter. As Dr. Layer works, she's accidentally pulled into a capillary. Breaking safety protocol, your ship's captain, Captain Braddock, steered the ship through a vein, past the heart and into the lungs, where Dr. Layer is being attacked by a white blood cell. Captain Braddock used lasers to get the doctor free. But this runs the ship's power down significantly. With quick thinking, you're navigated to the brain to use its electrical power to recharge the ship. It makes contact with a neuron and gets enough power to exit the volunteer's body and grow back to full size safely. It might surprise park fans to hear that Body Wars wasn't originally set to be a simulator attraction. It was actually planned to be a large-scale dark ride named The Incredible Journey Within. This pulled a lot of inspiration from Disneyland's Adventures Through Inner Space, and took guests through massive sets on an Omnimover system on a tour of the human body. The scale was what led to the demise of the original concept, as Epcot relied heavily on sponsors to build, operate, and maintain attractions. As the Wonders of Life Pavilion was coming to fruition, Imagineers turned their attention to the Atlas ride system being used for the upcoming Star Tours. It was a much better fit to keep the attraction's costs down, but Disney did splurge on the film itself. Not only was it longer than Star Tours, but they brought on Star Trek's Leonard Nimoy to direct. Epcot fans might also recognize the writer, Scott Hensey, as part of the songwriting duo for the long-defunct Kitchen Cabaret. Body Wars wasn't without its problems from the very start, however. The constant ebb and flow in the vehicle while in the volunteers' bloodstream left a lot of gas screen in the gills. Coupled with some issues with the system that caused a slight delay between the projection and the motion of the simulator, it became an increasing problem. At one point, a few frames were clipped from the film to try and alleviate issues, but this quick fix was noticeably visible. This did help, but Body Wars could never shake its reputation for making guests sick. Despite these issues, Body Wars continued operating until Wonders of Life was converted into Festival Space in 2007. The attraction's queue and loading bay were a popular spot for urban explorers inside Epcot, who kept a close eye on the simulators themselves. For years, they sat dormant until they were finally removed in November 2014. As of November 2016, the queue area had been stripped down. Walt Disney Archives tags were found on the large Met sign and a safety information sign. No one really knows what happened to the simulators in Body Wars, but it stands to reason they're being used for spare parts for Star Tours in Disney's Hollywood studios. So tell us, what do you think about these weird attractions? Let us know in the comments. If you're planning on visiting some non-weird attractions, our friends at Pixie Vacation can help you plan your perfect vacation to Disneyland, Disney World, or a Disney cruise specifically tailored to your vacation style and budget. And working with a Pixie is completely free. So talk with them to make the best out of your Disney vacation.